Hello everyone. Today we are here with Nishkar sir, and he is working at Status New right now, and he's a GitHub Star. So let's hear from him. What was his journey and everything? Yes, sir.
Awesome. Thank you, Neha, for the very quick intro. I'll start my screen share and would like you to tell me whenever you can see the screen before I
Okay.
continue. It should be visible by now.
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Awesome. So welcome everyone. Good afternoon. And myself Nishkash, I'm going to talk about my introduction in just a quite while. But before that, I would like to thank Reskill for hosting this event, and especially Neha for giving me an opportunity to talk about my journey and also the GitHub Stars program. Uh, I'll quickly run through the agenda before I start blabbering about my introduction. The agenda for today is we are going to talk about the GitHub Stars program, and there are a lot of GitHub Stars all across the world, and they have their own unique journeys. I'm going to talk today about what my journey has been over the past few years around open source and GitHub in general. I'll also spend some time around the GitHub Stars program, what it is, how you can be a member of it, and when once you, let's say, become the member of it, what are the benefits or swags you get. And finally, I'm going to talk about some takeaways that will be useful for the audience. And this session will not be, I can promise you, will not be about glorification about my journey. It will be a very naked and a truthful discussion that I'll do with highlighting the pitfalls or mistakes I've done in my journey. And I would like that you guys should not repeat those. So I'll hopefully add value to your career. Okay, next up, I would like to talk about who am I, basic Linux command, and it will return that my name is Nishkash. As Neha correctly mentioned, I'm working as the principal evangelist at Status Neo. So Status Neo is a global agile firm working in the field of cloud native D3, which is data, DevSecOps, and digital. I work as the evangelist who tries to represent Status Neo across different platforms like blogging, conferences, meetups, etc. Apart from that, my day-to-day job also includes me working as a software consultant. So I primarily have most of the interest in cloud native. So I do DevOps and work as a consultant to a few of our partners and help them in their journeys. And also for my experience around GitHub and open source, I'm an international GitHub star, one of the 6 in India. And if you guys want to connect with me, my socials are there in the slide. Uh, I'm mostly active on LinkedIn, a little less on Twitter, but if you guys ping me, I'll respond everywhere. Okay, I'll start with the agenda, which is what has been my journey, and I'll also try to cover up some pitfalls. So I'm a man of few words in the slides. I generally try to add pictures and then talk more about it. So this is the beginning of my journey, beginning of my open source journey rather. That in 2000, when I was in my university life, this was around second year, let's say. I was always a bright student. I'm going to say bright in these words because I was doing goods in academics basically. But what there is this huge bad myths in the society. Like if you are doing not doing good in academics, people will come to you and say that you should focus on your career, you should focus on your academics. Then only you can do good in your life. And once you start doing good in academics, then people will come again to you and bring you down with negativity. Like you are just theoretical, you only have theoretical knowledge, you don't have any practical knowledge. They'll start speaking some lines that they have heard on the social media, like that Bill Gates dropped out of this big university, and the people who used to top there are now working for him. Yeah, so these are the negativity that everyone will talk always. My beginning for open source journey was, I was good in academics, yes, but I wanted to break that stigma. I wanted to prove people wrong that I can be as good as in practical applications as good I was in theoretical experience. So but I did not know how to begin my career, how to find an internship, because I was in university. I could not have gone for a full-time job. So I wanted to search for an internship, and that's where I found this. So this is my introduction to open source. uh, and this is, if you can see on the screen, a community called OpenGenius. It's founded by Aditya Chatterjee, and based in Japan. They have 13,000 stars on GitHub, so it's a fairly known community in open source. And what they do is they provide you opportunities to code, source code, and put it on their central repository, which is called Cosmos. And it's just a collection of data structures, algorithms, and anything around coding that you can collate, which is source code plus documentation. And I started my first internship at OpenGenius. And what led to this was I became I became aware about what is really open source, what is GitHub, how can I create contributions in a central public repository. But also I became aware about the world of documentation. So whatever we did as documentation, we posted it as blogs or articles in the OpenGenius website, and the maintainers there asked me whether you have socials, you have LinkedIn or Twitter where you can reshare our blogs and tag us along. So by that, I also started in the world of networking. So I started posting my journey publicly on LinkedIn and Twitter, and what that led to was I saw people doing their own journeys in public life, like they're doing 100 days of code challenge, 300 days of code challenge, basically learning in public, storing their code on GitHub and writing about it. So doing public knowledge shares and all of that stuff. So that was quite interesting for me, and I started following that trends in the industry. So this was the game changer. This is a snippet of my 2019 GitHub profile. Uh, in the first half till July when my semester break happened, I knew GitHub, but I did not contribute actively. But after I started working for OpenGenius, I started doing the 100 days of code challenge as well and became extremely active on GitHub. Tried to code on a regular basis and also share knowledge on the websites, different websites like blogging articles or socials. Uh, so I was doing when I started getting traction, started getting a small bit of audience and making my own community. People started asking what is my motivation, and I've added a line here which I completely believe in, that we are a small speck of dirt in the universe. So to be very honest, when I was just started my career in public eyes, I was having some issues with my ego. I was not to the ground. I was like, hey, I have thousands of followers here and there, and I was going towards a bad mental edge. But slowly and steadily I realized that I'm nothing, and no one ever is anything, because we have to break out of our bubble, as it states on the slide. If you compare yourself in a room, you might be good. If you compare yourself in a city, you might be average. If you compare yourself in the whole world, then you are nothing. You will never be the best at anything. So you should always keep yourself grounded and always keep on learning. You should always see what others are doing and take inspiration out of it, of what aspects of their life you can incorporate in your one, and inculcate good habits that help you in your journey. And there's a this line at the end, you know nothing. I wanted to stick a photo of Jon Snow aside it, but I did not. So basically, the more you learn, the more you realize that you don't know anything. That's what happens, and that's what led me to keep on learning on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so next up, I'm going to talk about what I did in my journey of learning in public. I did 100 days of code challenge. So I was learning Python at that point of time and DevOps. So whatever I was learning, I was documenting that as form of markdown, putting it on my GitHub profile. If I was learning some stuff which was outside coding, I used to blog and post it on Dev2, Medium, and all of those platforms, and sharing it on socials. I After that, I started gaining interest in the world of AI and machine learning. So I also did 100 days of ML code challenge, which later on became my one of the most known repositories with over 200 stars. And after I completed the 100 days of code challenge, I realized that I can still keep on going. I haven't lost my drive yet. So I did the 301 of days of code challenge, which is nothing but added a notion of consistency in my heart. And obviously, keep on following Tech Twitter and LinkedIn to gain inspiration from others who are doing awesome in the community. The takeaways of my public experience was me becoming consistent, and that it's very important. What It's not important that what value you are adding on a day-to-day basis, or let's say in a year you did something good, but some months ago what really matters is you show up on a day-to-day basis. You are consistent, and that's how habits lead to your career growth. I also learned the importance of hard work. That I'm going to quote the literal saying, which is hard work leads to success. And then I also learned the importance of knowledge share. So as I said, when I started out, I did not know how to start, where to first apply for internships, or what community to join. So I make it as a habit that whenever whatever I'm learning, I do it in public eyes, so that others can take inspiration or reach out to me, so that I can guide them as much as I can. And final bit that I that is something that everyone should do is networking. You should always reach out to people who are doing great in the industry, talk to them, take inspiration, as well as keep a touch, so that if and whenever you need help in your career, like asking for a reference, let's say, or asking for advice, like what you should do next in your life, then you can take that as well. Next up, I'm going to talk about competition. uh, so this is another thing that a pitfall or a bad habit that I had. I always used to have a very competitive edge, and I used to say, like, did you see what he's doing, what she is doing? It should be me, it should have been me, and all of that stuff, and make my mood go down and feel bad about it. But I have attached this guy here, which is if you guys don't know him, he's Conor McGregor. He's a multi-time mixed martial arts artist championship. He has won it in the UFC, but that's not of any concern. What is of importance is he has given two quotes about competition that I love, and I really try to follow. So he says here that if you're surrounded by your competition and you are outworking these people, outmaneuvering these people, it builds your confidence in time, and that's very important. You should have good self confidence, and you should always look within yourself. And another of his most famous saying, which I love the most, it's my favorite quote. It is that it's always you versus yourself. If you compete against others, you will become bitter. If you compete against yourself, you will become better. So if you only focus on your mental edge, you will become a much better person. You will become trustworthy, and you will also become a better human as well, uh, apart from also doing great in your career. Next up, I'm going to stop talking. Talking continuously. I'm going to ask a question to the audience. I had a very bad notion in my head as well around what success is and what its definition is. So I'm going to give it to the audience to let them answer what is their definition of success. And maybe Neha can help me if there are some answers, so maybe she can provide an answer for herself as well.
Okay. For me, success will be when I'm like, I have a mental peace. That's important. Mental peace and happiness. So that's success. You are successful for me. Yeah.
Awesome. That is an amazing answer, Neha. Okay. Any other answers from the audience?
Lakshit, if you have any answer, you can share here. Achieving goals.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. So maybe I can continue.
So
So
yeah, I do have
yeah,
one
please.
one point. So according to me, success is when you are not promoting anything, the work you are doing, and still people are getting what you are doing. They are knowing how you are doing, when you are doing, and where you are. Even you are not promoting anything, still the people are getting, yeah, this person is doing something. So this is what success means to me.
That is an awesome answer. Amazing. So you guys are already having a very good notion in your mind in what success is. I'm going to step back, and few years back, I had a very bad answer in my head that I used to think that if I make a whole ton of money, and I am famous or well known, like people are following me, I have a huge followership on socials, let's say, that I am successful. Yeah, that was a bad notion in my head, and that is something that most of the people I see do as well. uh, and it's basically immaturity that we have. But I heard a very good podcast recently, not a podcast, but a commentary rather. I'm going to show that as a photo here just to explain. So these are two famous guys. On the right, you can see Sushant Singh Rajput is there. On the left, there is PewDiePie, the most well-known YouTuber around the world. So when Sushant passed away, there was a commentary done by PewDiePie, and he uploaded it on YouTube. It's a must-watch if you haven't watched it. And he commentates on one of the interviews in a college in Bombay that Sushant gave about what his journey has been and what his mantra of success is, and what is the real meaning of success. So I really completely agree with his answer, and his answer was this. So, as you all know, Sushant was one of the most well-known faces in Bollywood, and he had made a lot of money, and he was also well-known as well. But he told in that interview that he was not content or happy uh, earlier in his life after gaining a lot of success, because he felt like he was always overburdened with his thoughts. He was not living in the present. He was always worried about what I'll do in the future, what film should I sign, or he was also always worried about what happened in the past. And he also gave an example like he used to overthink everything. Like he used to create flow charts. Like if I do this as my next step in the career, if it fails, I'll do this. If it succeeds, then I'll do this. So he was always overthinking, and he wasn't living his life. He wasn't happy. He wasn't content. Then he gave an another example, which was that whenever he was preparing for engineering studies, he did not like studying the entire day, but he was always waiting for the time period, which was 4 to 5 p.m. in the evening, when he was allowed to go outside and play. And he was like, that 1 hour used to go away in like 5 minutes for him, because he was enjoying that time period. So he derived a new definition of success for himself, which was doing things that you are excited about and living in the present. And that was his mantra of what made him happy and what he felt was real successes. And just to add to Neha's answer, mental peace is very important. So living life peacefully and living in the moment is the mantra of success. Okay, enough blabbering about my journey. I'm going to stop boring you guys. I'm going to move towards the technical aspects of this session. uh, i'm going I'm going to try to break the myths around open source now. There is a huge myth in the industry because there are some content creators, quote unquote, who are spreading misconceptions, uh, like what is really open source. But before we answer that question, I'm going to take a step back and talk about what is software development in general. So the myth that I am going to talk about is, these days content creators are only forcing the notion that if you want to be successful in tech, if you want to be successful in IT, then you have to be a good coder. That is the biggest myth there is in the industry. And there is another myth that open source is only about contributing code to well-known repositories. That is an absolutely invalid statement, and I'll try to explain why. So, what is software development? I'm not going to theorize everything, but on a very high level, I'll talk about the notion and the world of DevOps. So this is a generic software development lifecycle in form of DevOps, which is a short form for developers and operations. It's a collaboration of an end-to-end lifecycle of software. So if you see, I'll start on the screen. I hope you guys can see my pointer. The life cycle of software starts with planning. So you do architecture, you do designing, you do requirements gathering. After that, you move towards creation, which is implementation of software, which is where the competitive coding, the TypeScript, the Node.js, JavaScript comes in. After that, there is verification, which is testing. So testing is also quite comprehensive. There is unit testing, functional testing, integration testing, quality testing, uh, let's say load testing, smoke testing. I can name n number of testing more, just to validate that the notion of that coding is everything is completely wrong. Uh, then apart from source code testing, there is also quality assurance, which is QA, which is very important, so that the end users have a good journey. They don't face any downtime or issues. Then there is packaging. So for people who have worked with npm Node.js, you already know a package manager, which is npm. uh, Then if you're working with Java, you know Maven, and you also know that some of these technologies are not platform independent. It may work on a Windows but not work on a Mac, let's say, or a version of Node may work on a version of OS, but it not work on another version. So there is another notion which is called containerization. So you can use Docker, Cryo, etc., to package your source code into, let's say, platform independent packages. Then there is a notion of release. So if a software code works on your local machine, that doesn't mean anything. It should work on a cloud host environment that is available for the end users. So you'll have to create a release plan. uh, you have to set policies when this release happens. There is a n number of tools you can use for it. There is configuration, so there are tools like Ansible, SaltStack, etc., that you can utilize for environment strategies. Then there is monitoring. To be very honest, monitoring is the most important aspect of entire software development lifecycle. To monitor the feedback, to monitor how your application is performing, to monitor your infrastructure, that is very important. Another term that is missing in this page is infrastructure as code. You can write Terraform, etc., etc., to define your infrastructure, because in the real world, in enterprises, nobody creates infrastructure via GUI. So just going through this single photo, I can clearly state that software development is a vast industry, and people should really stay away from influencers who just state that, yeah, do competitive coding and it should give you uh, greatness in your life. It's extremely important. I'm not denying it. Competitive coding is very important. Having good fundamentals in data structures and algorithms is very important, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, since I've bored you enough with what software development for me is, and in my opinions, I'm going to the real definition of open source. And the real definition of open source is that your software, your source code is public. There is this definition I've copied from Wikipedia. I'm going to talk about my definition. Your source code is available publicly and it is licensed. So it follows an industry standard license like MIT, GNU, GPL, etc. And it is available for reading, for utilization, for modification, and distribution. I'll go to talk about distribution as form of an example. So everyone have used Linux. Linux is one of the most famous GitHub repositories, which are available publicly. But there are firms like Red Hat who create a wrapper over Linux to redistribute OSs. So they have created CentOS, uh, and etc. etc. that they can package as well. So you can always redistribute the open source software as your own software, albeit that should follow the license policies. And most importantly, open source software must be developed in a collaborative public manner. So it should be publicly available and people should collaborate. There is no individual contributor in open source. So that's the real world definition of open source. And nowhere it states that yeah, coding is the most important thing in open source. Next up, before I move towards more important stuff, I am going to talk about this analogy. I don't know if you guys have seen the series The Office. uh, it's available on Netflix. That's why I've attached Netflix here. I'm not advertising. They're not paying me for this. But if you have seen it, I'm trying to summarize the theme of this web series in few lines, and why it's an inspiring series. So this guy, his character name is Michael Scott. He's the boss of a paper sailing company called Dunder Mifflin, and he clearly uh, showcases that it's not important for micromanaging your employees. What's important is that you trust your employees to uh, explore various things in the industry and do what they feel they are best at. So the girl right next to him is Pam in the web series, and she started out as a receptionist at this firm Dunder Mifflin. I'm going to spoil a few things, but I'll not spoil the entire story. So later on, she had an interest in arts. She shifted to another branch and explored that, failed in it, came back to the same office. So it gives you an example that real software world should be a fail-safe environment where you have the ability to fail, but you're not penalized for it. You are given courage to continue and explore other things. After that, after few of the seasons passed away, she wanted to become the salesperson, and she got that role as well and did wonders in that. So I distracted this topic from open source to here just for telling you guys that even though you can start with coding, as I said, the world of software is extremely vast. You can and you should explore other opportunities, like you want to become, let's say, a product owner, a scrum master, you want to become a quality assurance, a tester. So it's a huge area that you can explore. You don't have to typecast yourself to only software development, only doing Node.js, only doing Python, etc. You have and you should explore everything in your life. Okay, next up, I'm going to come back in my journey and how I faced this as well. When I was doing a lot of social media, which I have done, which I stopped a lot in the recent times, I used to get a lot of criticism, lost a lot of hate comments. People used to say, all you do is nothing but just documenting your code and committing that on GitHub. You are using bots so that you are committing daily. I used to get so many comments that used to fiddle with my mind. I used to be sad and think a lot about it. But later on, I matured and I realized that all of this is noise. None of this concerns me, and everyone should have a good mental edge as well. You should focus on your mental health. You should never bother about what others are speaking uh, towards you. You should ignore it as noise. These are three of my favorite quotes that I try to remember when I feel bad about what somebody has said to me. Um, so the first quote is was said by CM Punk, another WWE guy. I'm very much into wrestling and mixed martial arts. So he says, "Haters are my favorite. I've built an empire with the bricks they have thrown at me. Keep on hitting." So what this basically suggests is that when someone says something negative about you, instead of getting sad or feeling bad about it, you should channel that negativity into the thing you are doing. You should put that as focus and put your head down and keep working. And another quote which was said by John Cena, I guess that's a fairly well-known name, was "You ain't successful until an entire arena is chanting." Grammar issues, please ignore that. Is chanting that you suck. So basically, he said that it's fine. People will keep on criticizing you, but always keep a good positive mind and keep working. And the last one is from the Game of Thrones. Tywin Lannister spoke that a lion doesn't concern itself with the opinions of sheep. So I'm going to leave it at that. Okay, a lot of stuff has been spoken about, but not about GitHub. So I'm going to talk about how I joined the GitHub Stars program, what specifically I did for GitHub, and around the GitHubbing community in India. So there is this slide about GitHub Evangelist. I I am a GitHubber at heart, and for those who don't know, the word evangelist basically means that you are always advocating for a particular cause or a topic. So I love GitHub and I like to talk about it as much as I can. Uh, and the things I did around GitHub community were I used I performed the 100 days of code challenge multiple times, and did knowledge share obviously. Then I did blogging around GitHub as well. So GitHub is not only a source code platform, it's version control hosting plus a whole lot of things. Like it's now moving into the world of CI/CD with GitHub Actions. It's moving into the world of packages with GitHub packages, GitHub Container Registry, whatnot. There are hundreds and hundreds of offerings GitHub by GitHub these days. I also used to talk about GitHub in multiple meetups and conferences. I recently spoke, not recently, in 21, I spoke at the GitHub Satellite Conference, which was the first ever GitHub conference in India. Then I also, since I was an active member of the community, I also used to get a lot of early access to the private beta, private releases before they came into general availability, which is GA. And I used to provide feedback to GitHub team so that they can see some things that can be improved upon before it's publicly available. Then there is this open community. So another part of my introduction, I did my bachelor's in from University of Petroleum and Energy Studies in Dehradun, and it was in 2020 or around that time, UPS became the first college in Asia Pacific to sign an MOU with the Linux Foundation, which is one of the most well-known advocate of open source. And we created an open source community called Open. I was the team lead alongside one other friend of mine in the open community, and we started out that community, and it's still growing strong. And the final thing that I advocated was we created another notion of 100 days of code, which was 100 days of code at UPS. So I came from a DevOps background, and I used to spread awareness about open source. So I asked a lot of my friends, a lot of people in my university and my juniors to start doing this challenge and start learning in public as well. So that's a well-known thing that I did as well around GitHub. Okay, then I'll finally move towards what is the GitHub Stars program. I'll talk about what are the offerings and what how you can be a member of it. But before that, I only have a single slide left, so I can talk about that first before moving to the main portion of the session, which is how does my open source experience helps in my day job. So as I started working around or evangelizing around GitHub, I came across or rather the organization called Status New came across my profile, and they reached out to me. I started working at Status New as the principal evangelist, and it has been a great journey. If I've been at the company for the past 2.5 years. I love working here. I also still till this date I'm actively involved in open source. So few of our partners that we work with are utilizing a well-known open source project called Backstage. If you don't know about Backstage, I would recommend you guys go ahead see that. It's an open source project created by Spotify, and it's now donated to CNCF. It has over 17,000 stars, and it's mostly around creating internal developer portals that can be used for self-service and saving time of the engineers. So I do a lot of dev relationship as well. I talk on a regular basis to the maintainers. We raise RFCs or issues so that we can help shape the roadmap of Backstage as well. And obviously, due to my experience in open source, I learned collaboration as well. I started collaborating a lot, and I broke my stigma of being an individual contributor and focusing on my career. I also started uh, to think more about playing as a team player and work with others. So that's all from the slide perspective. Next up, I'm going to just talk quickly about what is the GitHub Stars program and how you can be a part of it. So I'm going to utilize the GitHub Stars website just to talk about it. So on the website, you can see the tagline is "Go above and beyond." And GitHub Stars, unlike the common another common notion, is not about people who are the best coders or the best developers in a certain region. I'm not a good coder, to be very honest. I do have good fundamentals, but not good in any programming languages. Then you you see that it talks about its subheading is around recognize and lift up people who inspire and educate communities with the GitHub Stars program. So it's mostly for people who are active in the community, who are spreading awareness, who are evangelizing around GitHub. There is a featured stars list. These are one of amazing people. If you haven't followed them, I would love if you guys can go through the profiles. Quite inspiring, and you will learn a lot. And then we talk about what makes you a GitHub star. So you have to inspire others to, and you have to spread awareness about open source, and you should also spread awareness on how people can start. So this guy on the left is Eddie Jaude, and he was the GitHub Star of the Year in 2021. Sorry, 2020, and he has a community called Eddie Hub, where he teaches thousands and thousands of people on how they can start their open source journey by creating their first pull request, learning what GitHub is. He also shares tidbits on which conferences are coming up next, how you can fill CFPs, and he has a great YouTube where he talks a lot about what people should do as good practices. So you have to inspire others. Then there's also this section which talks about education and sharing. So whatever you are learning, whether it's you think it's small or not, it's a huge thing to always talk about what you're doing in public. If you blog what you're doing, if you document what you're doing and share it on the socials, it grows your profile, it grows your network, and that is something you should do a lot. And then you should shape communities. Most of the GitHub stars have their own communities. They have their own dedicated Discord servers or Slacks where they interact with the community on a regular basis. So that is something that makes you a GitHub star as well. And one thing that I would like to highlight: you cannot be a GitHub star by stating that I want to apply for GitHub stars. No, it's not. You can only be a GitHub star if you are getting nominated by the community. So it goes via nomination panel. So you can nominate others, not yourself, other GitHubbers as a GitHub star, and I'll showcase that as well. So you just go on to nominate. You have to sign in. I'm not going to sign in right now, but you can nominate an XYZ GitHubber via their handle and tell why you are nominating them. And then it will be reviewed by the GitHub and Microsoft team. And after they feel that, yeah, this person is really inspiring, or has done great around the community, they will become the part of GitHub Stars program. I'll next talk about what are the program rewards around GitHub Star that we as stars get. So we do get early feature access whenever a new thing is coming into the general availability or private beta in GitHub. Before anyone sees it, the GitHub stars get an early access, and we talk about those things, our feedback or what we feel can be improved in certain calls, which are also called inside calls. We also get to talk with members from Microsoft and GitHub in the community, and maybe talk about what we feel is going good or bad in the community, and raise concerns or issues that are not generally caught by the extremely busy GitHub staff. Then there is continued education. We get support from GitHub to learn around what new offerings they have, and also we also get all of these swags as well. We get a lot of t-shirts, hoodies, and stickers, and everything that you can count as a swag, you get it. You also get a skyline. If you have not seen GitHub Skyline, it's a 3D model of your contribution graph. We get that, and we also get a GitHub Stars award. Then there is event and speaking invites. So if there is a conference hosted by Microsoft or GitHub, you will get a free pass at the queue. You will get an early review, and you can also get a reference from GitHub team as well that this person should represent a GitHub star program in conference. Then you also get a feature profile. So every GitHub star has their own profile on this website, which I can showcase next. So if I click on stars, you will see all of the GitHub stars, which are 82 all across the world, are mentioned here. And if I can switch to the filter which states Indian GitHub stars, there are 6 GitHub stars. I am fortunate enough and grateful that I'm part of that. And the program journey is not only that you can become a GitHub star for a year or so. If let's say you are, for some reason or another, you are not an active member of GitHub anymore after you have become a GitHub star, you will always be a GitHub star, but you will be moved towards the alumni page. Like, these are the former GitHub stars, and it's not always that you have become a less interactive in the community. Sometimes there is a clause that you cannot be a GitHub star if you are a Microsoft or a GitHub employee. So some of these guys have moved on to join Microsoft or GitHub as well. So they are now alumni. So I guess that was a very quick run through of the GitHub Stars program. I'm done with my slides. I'm done with my introduction to the Stars program. If anyone has any questions, I'm now available for QA.
Okay. That was great session, sir. Like many things you said, I could actually feel that this has actually happened with me. I was like, yes, that happened. So I guess all the freshers and everyone in college or a fresher who's joining our organization, they'll be like learning a lot from all the experience you shared with us.
Right.
So,
Awesome.
okay, I guess there are like there, there's one question. I don't know how and why you're choosing paid playlists and content creators have option making them. I don't know.
All right. So maybe I can talk about this. Uh, I I can't state for I don't represent other YouTubers, so it's not a question that I can answer. But what I can state clearly is that if when you are part of open source, there is no guaranteed money, right? You are not a salaried employee that you will get money from a certain source. And open source, you can get sponsorship. There is GitHub sponsors program. you can get sponsored via some platforms like PayPal, etc. You can associate that in your GitHub repository and get paid for the services that you're providing. But at the end of the day, it's open source. There is no guaranteed money. So somehow people have to monetize, and if people are sharing knowledge, then most probably they tend to make money out of it. But it's not always the case. There are YouTubers like Kunal Kushwaha, who is a very well-known YouTuber in India, who is spreading across information for free, and there are others as well. So I'm not going to comment on what people are doing, but I do believe that if they're making money out of it, it makes more sense, because if they're part of open source, there is no guaranteed money.
I agree. Yep.
Thank you, Anish.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I guess that's all for the session. Thank you, Nishkar sir, for coming and guiding everyone through
All right, I guess Neha is getting stuck, but thank you so much, Reskill. Thank you so much, audience, for joining, and have a great day. Cheers.